All right. Hello, pre-calculus students. So what we're going to do here is just quickly walk you through how we can approach a Khan Academy assignments. And the first thing, we got a discussion request from Dave in second block about the intercepts of functions. Here, the assignments were the intercepts of lines. So let's take a look at what this help is going to be. So the first one that I'm going to go over is the intercepts of line review, and this is an article. And the article is a little bit different from an exercise in that you just go through it and take notes, and if you just complete it, then you're good to go. So it's like refreshing your memory and helping improve your understanding. So we look at the intercepts from a graph. The intercepts of a graph, all we do is we look at the x and the y intercepts. The y-intercept is when x equals 0, and the x-intercept is when y equals 0. So here we can see that the y-intercept is 0, 4, and the x-intercept is 5, 0. You can scroll through at your own leisure. Looking at the table, you look at the change in x and the change in y. You can find the slope, and then you need to manipulate the x values so that x becomes 0, and the y values so that y becomes 0. And then you need to know that the y-intercept is the value when x equals 0, and the x-intercept is the value when y equals 0. Moving on to an equation. With an equation, to find the y-intercept, you plug in x as 0, because the y-intercept is when x equals 0, and then you solve for y, and so then hey, you have 0, comma, whatever y equals to. And find the x-intercept, it's the value when y equals 0, so you plug in the 0 for y, 0 for x for the y-intercept. For the y-intercept, you plug in the 0 for y. You solve for x, and the x-intercept is whatever the value x is, comma, 0. So let's determine the x-intercept and the y-intercept here. The x-intercept, as we can see, is the value when y equals 0, so that's going to be 0, negative 7. 0, negative 7. So x is... the x value is negative 7, and the y value is 0. So once again, always important to double check your answers, see what you're actually saying. So the x-intercept, the x value is negative 7, the y value is 0. For the y-intercept, the x value is 0, and the y value is 2. So we have negative 7, 0, and 0, 2. And with this practice, we can check infinite times, and then we can see if that's right. So that's great. And you can also get an explanation. So you can, anytime that you're worried, you can get an explanation. All right, let's go to the next question. Now we have a table, and so we have values negative 6, negative 10, negative 4, negative 6, and the negative 2, and we notice the change in x. So the change in x is going to be plus 2, and the change in y is going to be plus 4. So that means that slope is change in y over change in x. So slope is going to be 4 over 2, or m is equal to 2. Remember, m means slope. All right. So now we just need to find our intercept. So to look at the y-intercept, that's the value when x equals 0. So that means that when x goes plus 2, y is going to increase by plus 4. So that means if we have negative 2, 2, our change would be plus 2 and plus 4 to get the y-intercept. So that would be 0, negative 2 plus 2 is 0, negative 2 plus 4 is 2. So our y-intercept would be 0, 2. Okay. To find the x-intercept, we'd have the points negative 2, 2, and we know that because the slope is 2, in order for the y value to increase by 2, the x value would increase by half of that. So the x value would increase by 1. So negative 2 plus 2 is 0. But negative 2 plus 1, so half of that, is going to be negative 1. So the x-intercept is going to be negative 1, 0. So the y-intercept is 0, 2, and the x-intercept is negative 1, 0. And can we always check to see if that's right? You can see by that check mark. Let's expand that. So I double check my view, but we can see that that is right. And then for the next question, we have negative 4x plus 7 is equal to 3. I want you to try some mental math here. So if the x-intercept is the value when y equals 0, if y is 0, we just have negative 4x equals 3, divide each side by negative 4, and x is going to be equal to negative 3/4, and the y value will always be 0. And for the y-intercept, that's the value when x is equal to 0. So if x is 0, we can ignore the negative 4, and we just have 7y equals 3. Divide each side by 7, and y is going to be equal to 3/7. So is that correct? Yes, it is. All right. Now we have intercepts for an equation, and before I actually solve this, off screen I went through the problem and I made some mistakes, but I want to show you what happens when I made mistakes. So I wrote down the problem and I solved it, and I got things right. I got the problem right, so I did my work, so I hit a check mark. And then for the second problem, I tried to solve it. I had 0, the problem was negative 7x plus 3, but then I made an error where, you see, I have 0 is equal to negative 7x plus 3, but then when I subtracted 3 from each side, I forgot to write the negative sign. So, because I forgot to write the negative sign, I had the wrong sign for my x-intercept. Alright, so I got that wrong and then wrote my mistake and I corrected it in pen so I knew I wouldn't make it again. Same thing for number 3, got it wrong and I corrected it in pen. So what that means is that by doing this method, I can keep track of my mistakes and correct my mistakes so I know what I'm getting right and what I need to do to get better. So with that being said, now that I'm kind of showing you how to do when you make mistakes, I'm going to make a little bit of tutorial for you to see for the process on if the hints aren't doing it for you for getting it right, okay? So remember the title at this page. So at the top of this page, we can write intercepts from equation. So from an equation, and that's from Khan Academy. And then what we can do is we'll have negative 4x plus 7 equals 2y minus 3. And so we can find the x-intercept and the y-intercept. So for our x-intercept, that's the value when y equals 0. So we'll just have negative 4x plus 7, ignore that 2y, is equal to negative 3. So then the next step is negative 4x, subtract 7 from each side, is going to be equal to negative 10. So that means that x is equal to 10/4 because I divided each side by negative 4. I'll show my steps each side. So that means when I simplify it, x will be equal to 5/2. So 10/4 does simplify to 5/2, 0. All right. So the x-intercept, we're going to write down as 5/2, 0. All right. Then the y-intercept, that's going to be the value when x equals 0, so we can just write that as 7 is equal to 2y minus 3. Add 3 to each side. 10 is equal to 2y. And then divide each side by 2. Y is equal to 5. So we should have 0, 5 as our y-intercept. Let's check if we're correct. Alright, excellent. That was problem 1. Let's go to problem 2. Oh. Negative 4x plus 7y is equal to 3. So what we need to do is find the x-intercept and the y-intercept. Same process here. Here I want to do this with some mental math, but I'll model it so I can completely show the work for those that are a little bit confused by this. So for the x-intercept, y is 0, so we'll have negative 4x, 7y times 0 is just 0, so we can ignore it, is equal to 3. So x is equal to negative 3/4. And then for it to find, so our x-intercept is negative 3/4, 0. And our y-intercept, so that's our x-intercept. Our y-intercept is going to be, that's when x is 0, so that'll just be 7y equals 3. So y is equal to 3/7. So our y-intercept is going to be 0, 3/7. That's our y-intercept. So negative 3/4, 0. And y-intercept is going to be 0, 3/7. Alright, so let's check that. Great. For problem number 3, we have y is equal to 10x minus 32. Here this is in slope-intercept form, so you can right away just say the y-intercept is 0, negative 32, because if you know that in the form mx plus b, that term right there, we know is the y-intercept. So before we even write down the problem, y equals 10x minus 32, we can say right away that the y-intercept will be 0, negative 32. Now to find the x-intercept, that's the value when y equals 0, so we can say that 0 is equal to 10x minus 32. So 32 is equal to 10x, and then we just to simplify x, so that means that 16 is equal to 5x, simplifying it. And so finally x can be equal to 16 over 5. So our x-intercept would be 16 over 5, 0. So let's check. Great. And then step number 4. Determine the intercepts of the line. 5x minus 9 equals negative 8y minus 3. So what are we going to do? We're going to find the x and y intercepts. So we'll have 5x minus 9, we'll find the x-intercept first, is equal to negative 8y, we ignore that, is equal to negative 3. So next step, we add 9 to each side. So we'll have 5x is equal to negative 3 plus 9 is equal to 6. So x equals 5, 6. Oh, I'm sorry. So be very careful. We divide each side by 5. So x is equal to 6/5. And so our x-intercept is going to be 6/5, 0. And for our y-intercept, That's when x equals 0. So we'll have negative 9 is equal to negative 8y minus 3. Add 3 to each side. So we'll have negative 6 is equal to negative 8y. Divide each side by negative 8. And y will be equal to 6/8, which will be equal to 3/4. So our y-intercept would be 0 3/4. That's our x-intercept. This is our y-intercept. So we'll have 6/5 0. And our y-intercept will be 0 3/4. All right. Let's check that. So the summary. Great, we got 100%. All right. So that's intercepts from an equation. Let's do the other intercepts problem. Well, this next one should be intercepts from a graph. Now for intercepts from a graph, this is less chaotic is involved. All you have to really do is see, also this is the steps for problem 4, but all you have to do is kind of visually be able to see it. So just write down what you did. Visually identified coordinates of x and y intercepts. All right, so let's get going without the document cam. All right, the y-intercept is just the y value when x equals 0. So right there, that's going to be 0, x value 0, y value is 2.5. For the x-intercept, the x value is 3.5, and the y value is 0. Hopefully this will just bolster your conceptual understanding a little bit. Great. Next question. I determine the intercepts. So here the y-intercept is going to be 0, negative 6, and the x-intercept is going to be negative 8, 0. Check. Excellent. Here the x-intercept is going to be negative 40 right there. Y value is 0, and the y-intercept is going to be, go to x equals 0, 0 and 15. Check that. Great. Here the x-intercept is going to be 3, 0. And the y-intercept is going to be 0, negative 11. Oh, here's an issue. You can't be sloppy because if you notice it intersects at negative 10. So here's what happens. I was 1 away. I was thought I was going to get 100. Here's what you can do. Now that you know your mistake, you can just quickly point out that you have to be more careful. Note, be careful. Let me pull up my doc cam. And double check. All right. So you can just do it. Remember, you can do it over and over again. So it's okay to make silly mistakes. You can always just do it again and get your time back. So x-intercept, negative 1.2, 0. Y-intercept, 0, negative 0.7. Negative 0.7, y-intercept, negative 1.2 x-intercept. Here, the y-intercept is going to be 0, negative 55, and the x-intercept is going to be 25, and the y value will always be 0 for the x-intercept. For this value, the y-intercept is going to be 275, x value is 0, and the x-intercept will be 125, but the y value will be 0, because 125 is in between 100 and 150. In this instance, the y-intercept is going to be 0.4, so the x value is 0 when the y value is 0.4. And the x-intercept is going to be in between 0.2 and 0.4, which is 0.3. So x-intercept is going to be 0.3 and 0. Alright? So, check it, show summary, got the 100. So it's totally okay to make mistakes, get something wrong, because you can always do it over and over again. Now, one last thing was intercepts from a table. And so I'm going to do intercepts from a table, and let me minimize that. So intercepts from a table. From a table. All right. So what we can do is have, for problem 1, we find the slope and then find the values when x equals 0 and when y equals 0. So we have negative 6, 5, and negative 3, 3. So the change in x and the change in y. So here the slope is going to be change in y over change in x. That delta, that means change. So that's an important thing to know. So the change in y is going to be 5 minus 3, which is equal to negative 2. And from negative 6 to negative 3, that's going to be plus 3. So 5 minus 3 is going to be so from 5 to 3, it's going to be negative 2, and from negative 6 to negative 3, that's going to be a change of positive 3. Okay? So we have minus 2 and plus 3. So our slope is going to be negative 2/3. All right? So let's find our y-intercept. Well, our y-intercept, we see it's already there. We already have the value when x is 0. So when x is 0, y is 1. But now we need to find the value of when y is 0. So if you have the coordinate 0, 1 on the line, we need to decrease. We need to find the correct value to make y equal to 0, okay? So we have the change in y and the change of x. So whenever you have a decrease in y, you're going to have an increase in x. So let's say you have, so looking at the slope, if y was to decrease by 2, x would increase by 3. But what we want to do is at the point 0, 1, have y decrease by 1. And if y decreases by 1, this has to remain proportional. So x is going to increase by 1.5. And so that means you're going to have 0, 1.5 as our x-intercept. 1.5, 0. Let's check that. Great. So that got us the right question. But what if we weren't sure about that? Maybe I was a little bit confused there, and needed help. So just because I got the right answer, maybe I still didn't fully understand the process. So you can still look at the hints and get by step-by-step instructions, all right? So here it shows kind of the same thing, seeing the +3, -2 pattern, and knowing that 0, 1, and 3, -1, that 1.5 is in between 0 and 3. Alright, let's go to the next question. And with the next question, we can flip over the piece of paper. We'll have x values for problem 2. X values of 1, -9, 3, -6, and 5, -3. So we'll have +2, +2, and then we'll have here +3, +3. So let's continue going on the pattern. Let's add 3 again. So that's going to be, if we do a +3 on this side, -3 is going to become 0. Oh, that's finding our x-intercept. And we add 2 on this side, and that means that 5 + 2 is 7. And so here we have 7, 0 as our x-intercept, because just by looking at the pattern, we found a value where y is 0. So when y is 0, we have the x-intercept, so we'll have an x-intercept of 7, 0, and we need to find the y-intercept, so that's the value when x is equal to 0. So let's go backwards this time. So if we go -2, -3, we'll have a value of -1, -12. So we need to find the values in between -1, -12, and 1, -9. So 0 is going to be in between these values. So our y value is going to be in between these values, all right? So 9 + 1 is 10. -9 - 1 is 10. So looking for our intermediate values, -12 + 1 is going to be -11. So the value in between is going to be -10.5. So y-intercept is going to be 0, -10.5. We can check that. Great. 3. So first of all, excellent. We have 0, -5 given to us right away, so that's our y-intercept. Now we need to find the x-intercept, okay? So the x-intercept is the value when y equals 0, so that is when we're going to have to find the pattern. So x and y will have -5, -7, 0, -5, and then 5, -3. So here we have +5, and here we'll have +5, and here we have +2. So +2, +2. Let's keep on looking at this pattern because we need to get y to be equal to 0 for the x-intercept. So the next value is going to be 10, and this value is going to be -1. The next value is going to be 15, and this value is going to be +1. So in between, so 0 is going to be in between -1 and +1. We need to find a value in between 10 and 15, and the value in between 10 and 15 is 12.5. So that's the average of 10 and 15. So our x-intercept is going to be 12.50, okay? And just double showing you the work there. 10 plus 15 is going to be equal to 25. And to find the average, you divide by 2. 25 divided by 2 is 12.5. All right, so that's some scratch work. Check that. Great. All right, and the last problem, number 4. I'm fine with using space efficiently. So -5, 0. So we have the x-intercept already. But we need to find the value when x equals 0. So we'll have x and y. We'll have -7 and 7, -5 and 0, -3 and -7. So let's keep on going till find the x equals 0. So we have +2, +2, -7, -7. So now we see the pattern. +2, -1, -7, -14. +2, +1, +1. And then -7, -21. So our 0 value is going to be in between -14 and -21. If we want to be extra careful, we can use a calculator and do -14 plus -21, -35 divided by 2. Our median value would be -17.5. So when x is 0, y is -17.5. Alright, and so that's 4 out of 4 on all of the intercepts problems. Excellent. Have a great time. I might be posting later.